Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand. Jessop's Journal is a collection of powerful, positive, and inspirational stories. It's time for Jessop's Journal.
Hi, I'm Doug Jessop. Welcome to Jessop's Journal. In this episode, we feature powerful, positive, and inspirational folks doing special things. Some very, very special things. This is a salute to our service men and women. Our first guest is an ordinary woman that does extraordinary things with ordnance. Translation, she's a demolition bomb expert. Whoa. So you got to do boom stuff.
Well, I figured if I was going to go into the military, I wanted to do something I couldn't do anywhere else.
Yeah. Rob Shallenberger aimed high, and his dream became a reality. He ended up flying F16s, T-38s, and even spent some time with Air Force One.
You go with Air Force One anywhere in the world that it goes, you go out in a week to 2 weeks in advance and prep everything for Air Force One. So work with the crew. You want to make sure the president gets in and out. The idea is to have no news stories, no stairs incidents.
Sergeant Michael Russo comes from a long line of military service. He told me some incredible stories about his grandfather, who actually served in the Battle of the Bulge.
While the battle was going, a lot of these tanks actually ran out of fuel, ran out of oil, and so one of his big stories is that he had to walk 20 miles back across the enemy lines.
In between, musical guest Cinders sings about that eternal question. What do you want to do when you grow up? But first, Jazz Wilkey. Jazz, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here.
You have some very, very intriguing military history in your family. You served in the military.
I was with the 151st Air Wing for the Air Guard and also the 151st Civil Engineering Squadron. And what I did for civil engineering was EOD, which is explosive ordnance disposal.
So you got to do boom stuff.
Well, I figured if I was going to go into the military, I wanted to do something I couldn't do anywhere else.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I have to admit, that does sound, on the one hand, it sounds really fun. On the other hand, it sounds kind of scary.
Well, when I was in basic training, my TI, when he found out what I was doing, he just shook his head and walked away. He left me alone after that.
It's like, do not mess with this lady, she can blow your place up.
Yep.
So have you had any other family, kind of tradition in the military?
I have lots of family in the military. My dad was in the Navy in Vietnam, and my grandfathers were both in the military. My dad's dad, Frank Long, he was a major in the Army. My mom's dad, Eddie Janik, he was in Austria, World War II, all of that.
You've got a bell.
I do.
What's the story behind the bell?
The bell is my dad's. He served on the USS Albatross, and it was decommissioned while he was over in Japan, and they had to throw all the weaponry into the sea. It was really strange listening to him talk about that. He was able to bring the bell from his ship home, so I have his bell now that he's passed away.
Man, those are hard to come by. What does the military mean to you and your family?
To me, it means a lot. This country is a great country, and we need to do what we can to protect it. And serving in the military, you are a part of something much bigger than you. You know that you're there to protect others who cannot protect themselves.
Now, I know family means a big deal to you.
It does.
And this country was made from people coming from all over the world. And so you and I have talked about this before, and we have some common homeland, if you will. So my mother's 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 mother, okay, how's that, 5, okay, is a woman by the name of Anna Maria Leszczynski, okay, and she's from what's now the Czech Republic. And I understand that you've got some relatives from that same general area.
I do. I'm a little closer than you are. It was my great-grandmother who came over from the Czech Republic. Rosa Mashek. My grandmother, Helen Janik, was married to Eddie Janik, who went into the military as well, and served in World War II. And that was the USO picture I was telling you about.
What kind of music did the Eddie Janik band perform?
Well, it's the Eddie Janik Orchestra.
Oh, excuse me, Eddie
Orchestra.
Janik Orchestra. Okay.
Because it's old school. Full-on Czech polka.
Oh, polka! Okay, so did you do some polka dancing as a little girl?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So if I remember right, there's the saxophone. You got to have a tuba.
Yes.
Okay, what other kind of instruments would have been in his orchestra?
Clarinet, drums, horns. It was like a big brass band.
What instrument did he play?
He played sax and clarinet. I have a clarinet that he purchased, and then my mother played, and the rest of the siblings played, and then my son played it in band.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's cool. So your son got to play his grandfather's clarinet.
His great-grandfather's
Great-grandfather's
clarinet.
Wow. Oh, that has got to be so cool.
It is really neat. And we found out it's a pretty awesome specimen because I had to have the pads changed and things, and the people who fixed it were just floored. I played flute and bassoon. Bassoon was my favorite, and did percussion. Music is a big part of my life. So
what does music mean to you?
it is everything. It affects everything you do. It affects your mood. It can help you calm down. It can lift you up. It can fill you with so many emotions. To know I come from a musical family is incredible to me. I think music is life.
You know, talking about life, you know, there's all kinds of different things that happens in life. I interviewed a lady recently, and she had some issues health-wise, and that made it so that her eyebrows weren't quite what she wanted to be. And she told me that something that I thought was interesting about, you know, the importance of the face and, you know, how the impressions and everything. My great-grandmother, she used to say that the eyes were the window to the soul. And so, to you, what do eyebrows mean?
Your eyes are the window to the soul, and your eyebrows frame that. Your eyebrows show the expressions and explain how you're feeling. It's really hard to hide when your eyebrows are telling somebody that you're upset. You know, you can't really hide
I hadn't thought
from
of
it.
that. That's a good point. I've noticed that you started doing with this tattoo away process is starting to help people with the eyebrows. How does it work?
We abrade the top layers of skin, the epidermis, and in that polka dot pattern you were talking about earlier. And where I focus is just where that ink is. And so that abrasion is going to create that healing eschar or debris scab, which will surround the ink in that spot, and then it will take it out through the surface of the skin, leaving brand new skin that will slowly fade back into their normal skin tone.
Why do you do what you do?
I get to meet some really interesting people, and I love helping them. Whether their goal is to change it because they've outgrown their epic tattoo from their epic transformer, or it's somebody who's had something very significant change in their life, and whether that tattoo was helping them through a rough time, or they were, like you mentioned, gangs or prison or things like that, they are moving forward in their life and they need to get rid of this. So being able to help them do that in the quickest and best way possible, to just see their face light up, especially after that very first treatment, because you can explain it to them, but they just don't understand it and they don't really quite believe you. And those first scabs fall off and there's no ink in that spot anymore at all. And their face is just ecstatic. It's really neat to see that.
Well, the name of this series is called Jessop's Journal. And my journal has all these marks and kind of scars on it, because to me, life kind of comes with scars. And, you know, it's kind of cool because sometimes you get to help fix scars, I guess. But the last question I like to ask everyone, And it's kind of an esoteric question. So, Jazz Wilkey, how do you want to leave your mark?
I want to accomplish something where I'm helping people or animals, or just to be able to make something great, whether that's just in my own house or with others. I want it to mean something.
Very cool. One of my favorite inspirational quotes is from Audrey Hepburn. She said, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." Everyone has a story, and sometimes those stories are told through music. It's time for Jessop's Jukebox with the music group Cinders. Now, they've got this awesome new video coming out, and it talks about growing up. And let's just say that watching that, I'd be called Ted, they'd be called Teddy. Okay, to get the details, you gotta watch that. But with their new song, Growing Up, it's Cinders.
So funny how growing up is also a part. If we do it in this way, why'd we even start? I'm over this, too old for it. I bet you thought that growing up would make you more mature, but I feel more like a kid than I ever did before. I'm over this, too of mind in pieces all the time. I guess that's just the way it goes. It's breaking by design. Yeah, yeah! Everybody wants a piece of me, and I don't know why. There are only so many parts before I roll over and cry. I'm over this, too old for it. And I'll try to do the things that keep me moving on. My heartbeat will beat until it's greeted by the sun. I'm over this, too old for it. Why do I owe these things? I'm over this, but I'm old enough to know that I'm not who I thought I'd be by now. Growing up shouldn't even be allowed. Why do I owe these things? I'm over this, but I'm old enough to know that I'm not who I thought I'd be by now. Growing up shouldn't even be allowed. Why?
You know I've worn hats from that famous picture over there, the meeting of the rails. Well, this is another one called the Railmen. Imagine that you're a kid in a stadium and you hear a roar, those planes coming over, and you go, one day I want to be one of those pilots. With me today, Rob Shallenberger. Rob, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you having me here, Doug.
Not a problem. Now, I have to admit, a big part of the reason I came, to call you is my dad used to work with a guy that had the exact same name, and it was in the military, and then I come to find out you had been in the military, but apparently no relation. But
no relation yet. Flew F16s, T-38s, worked with the Air Force One for a little while, and you said, funny last name. That is true. So for the first few months, it was S+12. That was easier than Shallenberger.
So that little plane, the F-14. All right, okay, yeah. Now, you mentioned the Air Force One thing. You can't leave me hanging. Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, so that was awesome. I mean, incredible experience. You can apply to be an advanced agent for Air Force One, and I did that my last year and a half in the Air Force. And really, it's where you go with Air Force One anywhere in the world that it goes. You go out in advance, a week to 2 weeks in advance, and prep everything for Air Force One. So work with the crew. You want to make sure the president gets in and out. And the idea is to have no news stories, no stairs incidents, nothing like that.
Oh, come on, you're gonna keeping us out of business, jeez,
But this was cool. We went to Seoul, South Korea, Mexico, G20 summits. You just really see some amazing things. So another just cool experience and opportunity.
Yeah, well, aim high, right?
Well, yeah, there you go.
Okay. How in the world did you get into the military in the first place?
Well, do you want the long or the short version?
Yes.
The 3-minute version?
Yeah, we got time.
Since this is an interview and we're talking about life, and I know a lot of people, we all have different challenges, right? We're all going through something. And as a teenager, that was my time. I really had no direction. I had low self-esteem. It was a time in my life where I just didn't know what I was going to be doing, with life. It was tough. And I don't know if people can relate to that, but teenage years for me, that was my rough time in life. And I remember one day there's an event here in Utah called the Stadium of Fire, 4th of July celebration. And every year they start this 4th of July celebration off with this flyby of F-16s for anyone who's been there. And so my brother and I are sitting in the stands, and these jets come over, and if you've ever been around a fighter flyby, when they go over, you feel that rumble in your chest, and it's just an awesome feeling. Well, these jets flew by the Stadium of Fire, and we felt that rumble and that roar, and my brother and I looked at each other and said, someday we're going to fly those jets right over this stadium. And, it was at that moment that, if you want to call it the seed of a vision, call it whatever you want, but it was planted. And something changed in my life. And whereas I wasn't even on track to graduate from high school at that point, everything changed. I mean, I got laser focused and asked, well, how do you become a fighter pilot? And that's really, everything changed. I got my private pilot's license at 17. I said, okay, I've got to go to college. I'm going to compete with some sharp cadets all over the nation, for these coveted pilot slots. And so really it was 16 sitting in the Stadium of Fire, watching the jets fly by, that was the seed that was planted, or the beginning of a vision, and it changed everything about my life. And ironically, 15 years later in 2007, both my brother and I had the chance to fly by the Stadium of Fire, him on the left side of the formation and me on the right side. We both became F-16 pilots. We did a broadcast from the cockpit.
Oh, yeah?
So Senator Ornhatch made the introduction. He was the senator at the time. He made the introduction. It was up on the big screen. My brother made a comment. I made a comment. I remember lining up. We flew over the stadium. Everyone's cheering in the stadium, and you don't hear any of that in the jet. You just hear. And after we'd gone by, the ground controller came over the radio and said, nice flyby, perfect timing. Congratulations, Shallenbergers. I remember chills up and down my arm and a tear in my eye. And it had really been 15 years to the day since we had sat in the stadium saying we're going to fly over the stadium someday. And we timed it so that, right when we fly over the stadium, it was perfect. So yeah, it was all lined up. Big Jumbotron cameras in the cockpit, family down in the stadium all crying.
Oh yeah, I can believe it.
So there you go. That's how it all happened.
So now, you actually were a pilot right after 9/11. How did that change for lack of a better term, the mission of the military, and specifically for the pilots?
Yeah, it changed a lot. I remember, just like a lot of people do, that exact day. I was in pilot training at the time in Oklahoma, and we were night flying. So, we're not getting back till 1 in the morning, and just we're in that phase of training. I remember waking up at about 7:30 or 8 in the morning, because we'd gotten home late the night prior, and my wife came in the room and woke me up and said, Rob, you need to see this. I walked out, flipped on the TV, right as Tower 1 was collapsing.
Oh, jeez.
And I got on the phone, I called over, bases are getting locked down. I mean, I just got crazy stories from different friends who were in the F-16 at the time who were like, they were just told, get in the air. In fact, a friend of mine was in one of the two F-16s that was tracking down the flight that ended up going down in Pennsylvania. They were about 80 miles behind it, running it down, and they were literally on the radio discussing, what happens if we catch it? We don't have any missiles. They just threw us right in the jet. We took off, and their plan literally was to, if they had to, ram the jet.
Wow.
Ram the airline. So they were going to try and hit the back or the wing, eject if they could, but possibly give up their life. So to answer your question, it really changed the game. Obviously, the tenor and tone of war changed. Before, you talk about fighting governments. Well, now you're talking about fighting a decentralized group of people, Al-Qaeda. They don't have a home base. They don't have a country. Changed the whole dynamic. So our responsibility, I went to South Carolina after that, was called Noble Eagle. And for 3 years, we started flying air patrols over our own country.
Wow.
That had never happened before.
Yeah.
So you fly over New York, there's jets over the Super Bowl. Anytime the president would leave the White House, there's two F-16s or two F-15s or whatever with the president. So Bush at the time, when he'd go to visit his ranch in Texas, people don't know this, but there'd be two fighters over the top of him 24 hours a day. We had never done that before in the United States. So it really did change the face of everything. And of course, now we're years later after that's happened, and warfare as we know it has changed.
When you're going to train as a pilot, what are the things that you prepare yourself for?
Good question. I'll give you the nutshell answer. So you spend a year in pilot training. Everybody starts out in what's called a T6, and then you go off to different branches. So you have a fighter track, you have a heavy track, which is refuelers, cargo, et cetera, helicopter track, and so on. You spend another 6 months in your track, so in our case, a fighter track. And then when you finish, you have a class of, say, 5 or 6. You come down and literally say, we have two F-16s, one F-35, one F-15, number one student, what do you want? There you go. And then you get put into your specialty, if you will, your plane. So then I went on to another 10 months of what's called the FTU. It's a fighter follow-on training where you really learn how to fly and employ your jet. So if you're in the F-15, you learn how to fly and employ the F-15. You learn the tactics and everything that go along with it. In the F-16, same thing. So in the F-16, you can do air-to-air or air-to-ground, meaning you deal with air-to-air threats or air-to-ground threats. And it can get very complex in either one of those scenarios. After you're done with that training, then you go to your operational base. So like I mentioned earlier, I went to South Carolina for my first operational assignment, and that's where you get very specific into what you're going to do. So for us, our primary role was called SEED, or DEED, Suppression of Enemy Air Defenses. So our role in the Block 50 F-16 was, if there's going to be something big that happens, we'd be one of the first ones in, take out the surface air missile sites so that the people coming in after us, aren't hit by them.
You've done a whole bunch of different things, and so I'm dying to find out what in the world your answer is going to be to this. But the last question I ask everybody is, how do you want to leave your mark?
Yeah, I don't want to sound cliche on this, but if you know me, and we talked before this interview, and one thing I loved about you, Doug, is that you said I'm really transparent. I am who I am, and I'm the same way. And so I'll answer this in 2 ways. Number one, if someone leaves a conversation with me and has a desire to be a better person, that's my driver. My second driver, so in other words, if someone, and I don't want to sound cliche, but if someone feels like they want to be a better person as a result of pre-week planning or a conversation we had, awesome. It's leaving the world at least incrementally better. And the second is, I have a deep and passionate commitment to God. It's really a part of who I am and my nature. And so I felt the joy and the peace that comes into my life from that. And if I can help someone be some small part in their life to further their connection with God, then I feel like that's an important part of my and our purpose in being here. So I don't want to sound cliche, but I think that we are a part of a much bigger picture. And it's our responsibility to try and leave the world a better place. And so those are 2 things that if I go to my grave, would say, if I can do that, then this life will have been, worth it.
Oh, well said. Life is never boring. Sometimes you have something I like to call the wonderful world of regret. If you've ever had a tattoo or permanent makeup that you've fallen out of love with, the folks at Tattoo Away have come up with a pretty cool system that literally removes the ink out of the skin. One of the last things that my grandfather said was, "Please remember me." Well, Sergeant Michael Russo remembers his grandfather with something special.
I am a 17 Echo electronic warfare specialist. It sounds a lot cooler than it is. All opinions are my own and not the Department of Defense, as I am not a public spokesperson for the National Guard or the military or the Department of Defense.
Why are you in the military?
My grandfather joined years and years ago. He volunteered for World War II, and I've always felt a connection to him.
Tell me about your grandfather. What was his name?
His name was Gennaro. He was born in Italy. Gennaro Luigi Russo.
Where did he serve? There were certain battles that he was in.
The most notable one that people would recognize, the Battle of the Bulge. Movies have been made about it, that kind of stuff. He drove an M4 Sherman tank. Crazy cool stories from his battalion. It's a 707 tank battalion. At one point, while the battle was going, a lot of these tanks actually ran out of fuel, ran out of oil, and so one of his big stories is that he had to walk 20 miles back across the enemy lines.
I understand that you did something special to remember your grandfather.
It was my first tattoo, actually. I got a tattoo. It's actually his World War II insignia. And so it's from the 5th Armored Division. He's 707 Tank Battalion, 5th Armored Division of the 81st Armored Regiment.
Now I noticed some Greek letters.
Those are actually fraternity letters, the Kappa Sigma, Rho Phi chapter. And those are actually being removed right now.
Why?
I did the wrong placement.
You got a tattoo, you like the tattoo, but it's in the wrong place. How are you getting it removed?
I'm going through a company called Tattoo Away.
Describe the process.
She'll do these little dots. She'll draw them out, probably spaced, I don't know, a couple millimeters apart. And then she will take what looks very similar to a tattoo gun, and she will remove the top layer of skin. It's very similar to getting the tattoo. Kind of the same look, if that makes sense.
What happened after she had did that first treatment?
Basically, the area scabs up a little bit, and eventually the scabs will fall off on their own, and the scabs will be the color of the tattoo. It will actually remove the ink off of the body entirely.
Okay, soldiers, don't forget, wash your hands, wash your nose. Clear nasal spray washes away the bacteria, helps you breathe better, helps me breathe better. I know you want to breathe better, so come on, take a deep breath and relax. Thanks for watching this episode of Jessop's Journal. It's my honor to share powerful, positive, and inspirational stories right here on TV and online at jessopsjournal.com. Here's the thing I want you to remember. Number 1, thank a veteran. Number 2, everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry into Jessop's Journal, I'm Doug Jessop.